Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Now let's go to the rolling Flint Hills, home of the Cats and Dogs studio. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the Powercat Podcast. Fitz and Coles and Gills, your trio once again. You guys look good. Man.
You look good too.
If you were snacks, you'd be high sugar content. I think that's a compliment. I don't know. But a compliment is how much I love the Fridge Wholesale Liquor, the longtime sponsor of the Powercat Podcast. We have been doing the Powercat Podcast for, I've lost track, at least 15 years. And they've been with us nearly half, not quite, of that time. And we appreciate it so much. I got to go talk to Kevin about sticking with us. So I hope these good words pay off. Kevin, I love you. Look into the camera, Kevin. Lock on my eyes. Advertise more with Go Powercat. Okay, that's my read. It's my read and sales pitch all wrapped into one because I'm a master of these things. How's your summer going, Cole? You're doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's been good. Obviously coming home from Big 12 Media Days, I've had zero time to relax or get my life together. As I was talking about before we sat down and started recording, this is actually the first time I've been home to sit down and work at my computer. Every other time I do work, it's either in the car or it's somewhere else. And so it's been hectic. It's amazing how people think teachers get the summers off, but that is far from the case if you are myself.
You got to have your little hustles going, and yours is
That's
coaching.
right. That's
Gills,
right.
Is your bar that you work at just absolutely hopping? I heard you had a special guest on Saturday night, like a big star.
You talk about yourself.
Yeah,
that was great. But everything is well at the bar that I shall not name.
Si, senor. Okay, let's get going with the Powercat Podcast. If you don't know the rules in this joint, everyone gets to watch or listen to this nonsense. But only the people that are subscribers at gopowercat.com get to ask the questions. And now Ryan Gilbert is going to read those questions.
First question is from KSU Royals Cat. Are you okay with Florida State and or Clemson receiving more money than all other Big 12 members if they join the Big 12? How would that benefit every other member of the conference if all other teams are receiving less than Florida State / Clemson?
No, I am not comfortable with that. I am comfortable with their presence lifting the Big 12 payout. And this would take the cooperation, of course, of ESPN and Fox to go in there and amend it. I think Fox, from what I've heard, is all on board with it. ESPN's trying to sort out how do we manage this and how do they exit the ACC or cut their rights fees. I think the benefit that is attracting these schools to at least look at the Big 12, because be honest, a few weeks ago, I didn't think there was any chance of these schools even considering the Big 12. I think a big part of it is apparently there might be a promise to pay off their exit fees, through Big 12 funds, whether it's, equity funding or private equity or advertising, selling the conference name, that they'll pay off their buyouts. And of course, that's based on what their buyout might be, but that could be a big chunk of change that if the Big 12 can cover, that encourages them. But you can't have the caste system come back. It didn't work with Texas and Oklahoma, Texas predominantly. It just doesn't. And you can't put Florida State in that position because it gets ugly. They can be an equal person at the table, an equal school at the table, and the Big 12 will help them get to the table. But once you're there, you're part of the team. And this is kind of what makes the Big 12 special right now. This version of it is everyone is on board. Everyone.
Yeah.
And if you want to row in your own direction, then it's not going to work. I think I see Utah finally kind of steering into the Big 12 a little bit now that football's getting closer. Look, the Big 12 needs to do everything it can to get top 4 out of the top 6 brands from the ACC in. And the top 4 are Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, and Miami in terms of football TV ratings. You get those 4 and it changes everything. you're now perceived on a much higher plane, and you have a much more diverse product that you can sell the networks. Now you're at 20 schools with some great schools, more good games into the conference. They bring a lot to the table, but they shouldn't get more than anyone else while seated at the table.
It kind of feels like one of those situations where you just had your mom and dad leave the house, and now all of a sudden you're sitting around waiting for a new mom and dad to come home, right? Like that's kind of like the analogy I see it as with I don't know if that's possible.
Mommy?
Well,
Yeah.
Fitz, I
Okay.
don't know. Okay, right. But let's
Yeah.
think about this, right? Like the Big 12 has established itself. It has its own unique brand. Brett Yormark has talked about how he wants this conference to be the deepest football conference, and I would assume the deepest conference in every sport in America. So, no, you're not going to go out and desperately beg two of, I guess you can say, bigger brands in the sport of college
Yeah.
football, but they're not on the level of Texas and Oklahoma. So, like
No.
people who think that Florida State and Clemson, assuming they come to the Big 12 or if they come to the Big 12, will step in immediately and become that Texas and Oklahoma are misguided because that's just not what's going to happen. And up until recently, Florida State had not had the greatest success in the world, right? Let's not pretend like Florida State has been this dominant power under Bobby Bowden, like, everybody remembers them as. Deion Sanders played there in the 90s. So it's not like that Florida State has been that good since that point. They've had a few good teams, but they have not been as consistently good as, say, an Oklahoma has, or even, say, a Texas. And, I look at Clemson as another one of those programs that have they had a lot of successful seasons in the recent past? Yes, they have. But again, another one of those programs that 15 years ago, I mean, Fitz, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were just kind of another team out there. So, I think getting Florida State and Clemson in the Big 12 would be outstanding. But you're right. You can't look at them as the next Texas and Oklahoma, and that can't be the Big 12's pitch to them. Hey, come in and run this conference. I don't think that's what it is, but that's not what their pitch should be, because their pitch should be come and join a growing, budding conference that has the potential to be the most exciting conference in all of collegiate athletics.
Gil's thoughts?
I mean, you mentioned Texas. That was pretty much the only thing that I was going to chip in, was just we saw that simply does not work out. Teams are not going to be happy when the pieces of the pie are not equal.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I did my daily delivery today on how the payouts are basically equal per team right now. If you bring in the top brands for one conference and add them into the other conference, they're not going to be even close to equal. And that's going to take some juggling of rights fees, and maybe there'll be some lean years. I don't know how it's all going to work, but the Big 12 is trying to make it work. They're working on this. At first I dismissed this story, and then it's now been better sourced by, frankly, more reliable reporters. And there's something going on here. It's third-party negotiations, talking through intermediaries that, this is what we've got, and there seems to be some interest. Now the big question, though, becomes what happens to the Big Ten and SEC. Do they see this movement and say, okay, we got to do something right now? Because that's what Oregon and Washington did. They were invited to the Big 12, and that finally got the Big Ten to jump. So maybe this is great leverage for the ACC schools. Maybe they are genuinely interested, but this is the one truth. This will lift the ship closer to the SEC and Big Ten ships if they can pull it off. And they won't be considered lesser thans in their conference, because, guys, you will be in the SEC and Big Ten. If you think you're going to walk in and be seen as equals, look what they did to Oklahoma, a blue blood in college football history, and they gave them almost an impossible schedule with which to succeed. And Texas, they're going to kiss their butts because they're worth a lot of money. They're worth the eyeballs. They're worth the trouble, and they are trouble. And the last thing the Big 12 wants is another troublemaker. So Florida State, if you do make this decision, start rowing in the same direction, or it's going to be a rough go.
From Wagcat, Fitz, you kind of touched on this earlier, but can you categorize the ACC teams and your desire to see them in the Big 12 in these 4 categories? Definite takes, possible takes, I'd rather not but could support, and then hell knows. And so Wagcat gave off his list of these teams. We could maybe critique those. His definite takes are UNC, Florida State, and Clemson. Possible takes are Virginia, Louisville, Miami, and Virginia Tech. I'd rather not but could supports are NC State, Duke, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and Pittsburgh. His hell knows are Boston College, Wake Forest, Stanford, Cal, SMU.
There's only a couple I'd move around. That's a good list, Wags. I would probably move NC State up a notch. And there's multiple factors that go into who you want to invite. And for the Big 12, it's, are you ready to be an equal partner? And do you kind of fit our profile? Or are you worth so much we'll take you outside of our profile? Which honestly is now become metro schools, which Miami is, and ag schools for the most part. There's a couple schools that are outliers in there, Kansas and maybe Arizona State. But you need to fit in one of those two categories to really kind of fit this conference. And Clemson and Florida State and Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech all fit that. Georgia Tech would be one of my last picks, but my bottom ones, I'm not even going to mention Cal, Stanford, and SMU. They don't even count to me. That is the biggest joke of three pickups. They hurt themselves. They accelerated the destruction by doing that. They're just it's a poorly run conference. But I would have the absolute I don't want at Wake, Boston College, and Syracuse. And Pitt and Georgia Tech would be a step up, but probably not. Duke would probably be in there. Although Duke sounds great because of the basketball, they don't fit, man.
It's not a big school either. They're not a very big
school.
People forget that. And
Yeah.
and I don't know how many, I don't think K-State. I don't think the Big 12 has any what you would consider small institutions. I don't think Duke would fit in the Big 12.
Yeah. Duke would be great for the basketball play, but that seems to be fading a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the networks have made it clear to Brett Yormark, we're not going to talk about that until this contract's up.
Yeah.
Which means he won't be talking about that until 2030-ish. So that's a ways off. I think the direction they've been given is to improve football. And this is if you can, and this is the only way to do it at this point. If you can pull off the four biggest TV draws out of the ACC, you've done the very best you can outside of landing Notre Dame. But let's be real. And I think that's the direction they're going to go with the four I originally mentioned, with Virginia Tech and NC State. And some of those schools as backups. I believe North Carolina will absolutely be one of the invites to the Big Ten and SEC. They both want them. And that's based on footprint as much as the size of the school. Those conferences don't need more football powers. In fact, they might be in the position of saying, let's find some schools that are okay in football, maybe good in basketball, and won't hurt us in TV ratings and brings a big footprint to the conference. That's why I think North Carolina and even Virginia are highly valued by those two conferences. People aren't talking about Virginia. Folks, this is a massive state university with incredible history, incredible endowment, and, big fan backing, even though they're not watching a lot of games right now because they stink. But there's a huge upside to them, and that getting the state of Virginia is huge too. So that's where I'm at with it. I think there's so many good brands and products in the ACC. It makes no sense why they add up to equal parts of the Big 12, to be honest. And they can't understand that either. They think they are above the Big 12, but the numbers don't show that in ratings and overall performance of the conference in terms of financial measurements. But you get down, I think NC State helps your product. I do. And there's other ones that I think help your product. But if you can land Clemson and Florida State, Louisville's virtually a lock for the Big 12 if there's movement. They've been on the cusp of the Big 12 for more than 10 years. And I think that will happen. And then Miami would be the logical fourth add. I think they're a bad fit. I would personally prefer a Virginia Tech or North Carolina State, but the numbers are the numbers, and the numbers say Miami.
I would, Fitz, and I agree with you to an extent. Honestly, I would have NC State be the number 3 team that I would want to take in this conference.
Interesting.
And I say that from a strictly cultural fit. I say that also from an athletic standpoint. Guys, did you know that NC State, obviously, they made the Pop-Tarts Bowl, played K-State. They made the men's Final Four. They made the women's Final Four. And they also made the College World Series. So that's incredible. And we don't think of NC State as being an athletic powerhouse. Now, are they going to do that consistently year in and year out? No. But they've had an elite baseball program. They've had a super elite women's basketball program, and they've had a good men's basketball program for quite some time. On top of that, their football program, I was quite frankly unfamiliar with the success that NC State's had in football until we got to kind of see more inside their program. And they win 8 to 9 games, 10 games on a well, not 10 games. That was one thing they were talking about, but they win anywhere from 7 to 9 games on a consistent basis in the ACC in a pretty good conference. So, I think NC State would fit in. It was shocking, quite honestly, how much their fans reminded me of K-State fans. And I think that university would fit in perfect with the
I
Big
think they're
12.
the best fit.
I do too. And so if I had to pick a team, obviously you want Clemson and Florida State because they are the 2 biggest brands in the ACC. But you can't convince me, Fitz. I don't care what the money says. NC State being in this conference would be leaps and bounds better than Miami being in this conference. Look at the fan engagement. That's what they care about. That's what the Big 12 cares about. They talked about how many followers they've gained on social media. Give me an active fan base over a bunch of rich people who just sit there, don't go to games, and they root for a team that plays in an NFL stadium where they fill it up 25%. Sorry, give me NC State over Miami.
I was shocked to see their TV numbers as high as they were. Well, I was shocked to see Louisville third in the conference.
And that's another team, yeah. I still think I'd probably take NC State over them for all the reasons I just mentioned, but Louisville definitely is in that same category.
Money's obviously important, but the fit matters, right? Teams being good matters. Like Miami, I remember in the Bahamas last year for that hoops tournament K-State was in. Miami was playing there, obviously, and K-State had a tremendous following. So many K-State fans were there. You saw maybe 6 Miami fans at that entire event, and it was in the Bahamas, right? That's a very quick trip from Miami, but that's the thing. They have too much, you're already in Miami. I don't want to go on that trip. I have so much money. I'm just going to stay here and enjoy my life in Miami. That's not the fit of what the Big 12 is about, the passion. Now, obviously, the money's there, right? Miami has, some nice history there, obviously, with that program. But just in terms of the fit, I agree with both of you guys. I mean, a team like, or a program like NC State, an institution like NC State fits much, much better.
I agree with all that. This will be really interesting. And I want to be clear. None of us are saying this is going to happen.
Right.
They are in discussions. Maybe they're not that advanced, but when Jason Shear tweets out that there's a confidence in the Big 12 that they'll have some members, that tells me they're a little advanced in this, a little more than we ever imagined. But we don't know where it's going to end up because we can't gauge what the Big 10 and SEC are doing. If they're truly passing on those 2 schools, they've walked so far down the path of leaving the conference. I don't know how they turn back. And for all you saying go independent, how will you do that? You'd have to negotiate a rights deal. And believe me, they're not going to line up to pay a ton of money because you're going to have a piecemeal football schedule. I don't understand. Fans just don't get all the moving parts. And I love it when fans of other conferences try to tell Big 12 media, who has covered this for the past 12 years, 13 years, covered these movements and have understood the market really well. Don't tell us we don't know what we're talking about. We've literally lived this for years, and you sound just like the Pac-12 schools who denied, and also did character assassination on Shear and others to try to undo this or prove us wrong when it was going that way the whole way. It's not that far along with the ACC, but it's getting there. So I think the sources will be on the Big 12 end here, and we'll see how it plays out.
From Itame BB, I keep wondering why the Big 10 added Rutgers and Maryland. If they were done expanding then, fine. But since then, 2 Pac-12 schools were added, and you can't keep expanding forever. Did the Big Ten mismanage the early expansion?
In hindsight, yes, absolutely they did. But again, from the fact that I know how this works, the playing field of expansion candidates and what you judge on has completely changed in those 10 years. When they added those schools, ESPN's major argument was always markets.
Yep.
Because they were in the business of holding cable customers hostage for money. You know, you're going to force ESPN to be on the base package on all the network, all the cable systems through, you know, the New York area, New Jersey area, and Maryland. That was the line of thinking. Now, did it work? I'm not sure. But when you're getting paid $7 a customer a month for ESPN, imagine all the people that don't give a rat's ass about sports still forking that money over. It was a heist, and ESPN was doing it, and that was their business model. That model's died with streaming. Now it's about actual TV ratings and fan engagement, as you guys said a little bit ago. Those are the areas where the Big 12 is still doing pretty well, and fan engagement in the Big 12 is enormous. These schools, these fans care from top to bottom. And I saw an ACC fan say, don't pretend like the Big 12 doesn't have bottom feeders. And I'm like, well, maybe bringing in Arizona State brought in a current bottom feeder, but well, who is that? I mean, who is it? Cincinnati was just in the playoff not long ago. UCF was playoff worthy not long ago. BYU just is stumbled a little bit, but that's going to be a great program. They've had a national championship, for dear God. So I don't understand who the bad brands or who the weak links are in the Big 12. And that can only continue with bringing in more schools.
Honestly, I mean, we talk about cultural fits and, I think of Maryland as a Big Ten school. I don't necessarily think of Rutgers as a Big Ten school. Could both of those schools conceivably be in the ACC? And would they have been in the ACC if they didn't go to the Big Ten? Probably. I think that both of these schools were Power 5 bound no matter what. And so, hindsight being 2020, the Big Ten maybe wish they didn't add those schools and they added a Virginia or somebody like that instead. I'm sure. But both of those schools were correct. Those were Big East schools. At least I know Rutgers was. And Maryland was in the ACC, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
I mean, again, they're both Power 5 schools. So I don't think you can sit here and say, oh, they shouldn't have been going to the Big Ten. I mean, I bet if you asked the Big 12 in 5 years, you talk about bottom feeders fits. I don't think with Willie Fritz at the helm that Houston is going to be a bottom feeder.
Agreed.
But if they were, if they are, then that might be a team where the Big 12 says, maybe we should have added them instead of somebody else. But no, I don't think that was a bad decision by the Big Ten.
Gills, any thoughts on this?
No, I agree.
Okay.
And Fitz, I was gonna go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It was just I was gonna go to the next question. So
okay, no, I'm going to warn some schools of this, and Rutgers would be on the list, probably more so than Maryland.
Yeah.
In the next 5 years or so, we're going to enter retraction. They're going to be taking away spots to clear spots for teams or schools they see as more desirable. The greed is at that level now. Why are we sharing our money with this school when they're not pulling their weight? And I would think Rutgers would fit that mode of being kicked to the curb. I don't understand the mechanics of it and how it'll be done, but it's coming, man. It's absolutely coming down the pike. It's going to happen where some schools will be removed from these conferences and there'll be further shuffling, but that's down the road and we'll worry about that when it comes.
Last question of the first half. And Fitz, I just want to apologize, but Cole, I included this one just for you. From Call Me T22, what was the first play you ran in college football 25 with the Cats, and why was it the triple option?
So this is funny because, Fitz, I don't know if you've seen this, but there have been tweets coming out of SEC media days about how their engagements online from journalists and from writers and stuff, whenever they tweet and post and write about the college football 25 video game, it's like the numbers are like super high, skyrocketed compared to their normal tweets about SEC media days. So like right now, if you type in college football on Twitter, you'll see more tweets about the video game than the actual sport. So like this is a movement that is taking over our country right now. I think it's glorious. To answer Call Me T22's question, in true K-State form, Connor Riley would be very proud of me. I ran the halfback stretch. That was my
Nice.
first play. That was my first play. No, seriously though, guys, like, I mean, this game is pretty cool. I figured it would be. I think the reason why it's so cool is the nostalgia for someone like me who's played that video game when they were a kid growing up, and now that I'm an adult and I don't have hardly any time, but I still think I have the time to sit down and play the video game. It just brings back a lot of cool memories. And also it's really cool for the student athletes because these kids weren't even playing this game growing up. Most of them, they would have been 5 and 6 years old when it came out. And so now to see a whole new generation of college football fans get excited about the sport, get excited about the video game, I think it's really good for college football. I think it's really good for college athletics. And yeah, I think it's going to make some more maybe less known players much more well known if they have successful seasons in real life.
Gills, are you playing this game?
I don't think you saw my post on X.
Don't call it X.
I ignore
Twitter. Okay. I
got
don't
you
have a
muted.
new enough console. So yesterday I was playing Madden 18. First play I ran I was the Steelers playing against the Falcons.
Oh,
First play I ran
that's
was
a
a
lie.
halfback slip screen.
You were playing the Chiefs. You don't have to lie to
No,
our
so the
audience
Steelers play
right
the
now.
Falcons week 1 next year. We're replicating that, right? Did I rage quit at halftime because I was down by 20? Yes. I'm not going to lie. But I was playing against the Falcons, not the Chiefs.
Well, let me say this. Those graphics are absolutely incredible.
It is amazing.
The way technology is moving is unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal. And how long before you don't need a gaming, a controller, you can just literally AI will let you voice control everything. I mean, it's crazy. I'm not getting it. I'm not going to do it. I will never do anything else in my life except sit down here and play that game. And folks, I just want to say this as we go to break. 2 things. 1, the game isn't real. I saw a KU fan celebrating beating K-State on his game. It's a game. And second, in the second half of this podcast, if you're watching on YouTube or Go Powercat, we're going to play a drinking game. And every time my light blinks back there because the camera adjusts, it's not blinking. It's the camera freaking out. There it is.
Oh,
You drink. That's what we're going to do in the second half. And I'm proud of you, Gills. What are you drinking? Water?
Maybe.
Here we go. We'll be back. Thanks to the Fridge for being our sponsor.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Please visit The Fridge Wholesale Liquor, located at the corner of Claflin and Westport Road in Manhattan, Kansas.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast. Fitz and Gills and Cole right here, all gathered together in our own studios. Cole's got the secret studio in Kansas City, and I think we list Gills as a secret studio too, but it needs to be the luxurious townhome studio.
The penthouse Aggieville suite.
So I have a funny story about different rooms and studios and things like that. I love my life because one night I'm staying at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, Nevada, and 2 nights later I'm staying at the Travel Lodge in Fort Scott, Kansas, getting ready to coach a baseball game at night.
Wow.
Apples,
Why'd you have
oranges.
to do that to Travel Lodge? What did they ever do to you?
Just, it
Tell me
wasn't as
about-
luxurious as the Bellagio, but it was close.
What were the resort fees at the Travel Lodge?
It was $85 a night.
Just flat. So the resort fee was built in.
That was
because it's
all that you got. There was Perry's Diner, which was open 24/7. So
that's
technically
awesome.
there was room 24/7 room service. Now, the person making your room service might have only had 3 teeth, but you know what? That's okay.
That's okay. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Bellagio was wonderful. Gills played a lot of poker. I'm proud of you, Gills. We got a lot of work done. I walked a lot, which was good for me, sort of. But yeah, we'll be back there next year. I don't know if we'll be staying at the Bellagio, but we'll be back next year. Holy crap, Bellagio! You're proud of your resort fees. I never used the. Did any of us use the fitness center?
I didn't even know they had one.
Look
Yeah.
at yourself, Fitz. We all know you didn't use it.
Wow. That was rude.
That's just brutal. It's brutal. This is what I'm up against. You think the trolls online are bad? I got Ryan Gilbert on my staff. He's literally on my staff right now. Hey, I'm excited for next year, but we might just stay at Mandalay Bay and cab it to the Legion every time, because Mandalay Bay's right there. And plus it's got great pools because we spent so much time at the pool. Let's get going with your questions from Wabash Station. We're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Please, this football season, support the Fridge. They are great K-Staters, Manhattan owned and operated, and just an incredible store that has all your party needs. Questions from Wabash Station. Here's Gills.
From Mac90, what are you hearing about our special teams? How are the kickers and punters performing, and who are the likely starters? Is Dylan Edwards our primary kick returner and punt returner, or is someone else in that role?
Honestly, I don't think there are answers right now. I'm sure they're sifting through it, but Dylan missed spring, and I think that's all going to have to be sorted out in the fall. I feel pretty good about special teams because they brought in, I'm totally spacing his name, the new coach, who Kleiman really wants to get on staff full time. Kleiman is a big fan of expanding the coaching staffs and letting him hire, coaches that he would like to be on the staff. I think he'd also like to have Drew Little be on the staff full time as an assistant offensive line coach, since his OL coach is the offensive coordinator. That's a lot. You got 5 positions and calling the plays. So, but yeah, special teams, I think, is going to be solid. Thank you, Alexa. It's going to be solid. I do want to give a shout out to Sean Snyder, who got hired as punting and kicking coach at Oklahoma State today. And honestly, I'll be blunt. That's what he does. He doesn't do the return game. He doesn't do blocking schemes. I don't think he does punt and kick coverage. He doesn't do any of that. He's a kicking and punting and holding coach and an elite at it. So that's something to note, that he'll be in Stillwater this year.
I think Sterling Lockett's going to be the punt returner. Is that a bold statement?
No, it's not.
Because
they've been raving about him.
They have, and he was definitely lined up as, I want to say he returned 2 punts in the bowl game. Look, they're going to try and find a way to get him onto the field. It's going to be his 3rd year in the program. It's kind of that make or break season, I think, for some of those guys who are scholarship players who haven't seen the field yet. If you don't see the field your 3rd year into the program, the odds of you ever being a significant contributor go down extremely. So I think they're going to try and find a way for Sterling to see the field as a punt returner. I think it could be really, really good for him. I do think Dylan will be the kick returner. Also in part because I just think that there's a better chance for big plays to happen on kick returns than on punt returns. I mean, the punters now, Fitz, have gotten so good in college football. How many times do we ever see punts even get returned? It just feels like most of them are fair caught because there's so much hang time. A lot of that has to do with guys who are just sticking around for forever. I mean, think about Oklahoma State. They had a guy from Australia who was like 31 years old. No joke. Who was literally punting. And so I think kick return is probably a little bit more of a valuable position. So I could see Dylan being back there. But yeah, as far as the actual kicker goes, I mean, Chris Tennant is back. He'll be the kicker. I'm not sure there'll be much competition there. Leighton Simmering, Simon McClanahan maybe would be in competition to do the punting duties. I could see it kind of being a rotation the first few weeks as far as punting goes. There's no Ty Zentner, there's no Jack Bloomer, who's been around for 25 years at K-State. So it's all going to be younger guys that are going to be fighting to be the punter. And so that'll be interesting, but they'll be able to sort it out. And that's a fall camp situation, guys. Like,
Yep.
you figure
they'll
that
work
out.
that.
Those
Yeah,
guys
exactly.
work together the whole entire practice. It will become clear who needs to be the punter, who needs to be the punt returner, who needs to be it will become clear. It'll just take some time, but we'll know hopefully by week 1.
I like what you said about, kick returns. That there's a lot more. Obviously, punt returns can be, the explosive plays, but a lot more can go wrong on punt returns when you look at, holdings and blocking the backs. I know fumbles or risks are there too. And so kick returns at worst, it falls apart and you're at your own 17 to start, right? At worst for a punt, you're backed up 15 yards from where you caught it or whatever because you have a holding or some sort of penalty in there. So we talked about this with Lincoln Cure. Like, doesn't matter when you're a freshman, like you're on campus, if you're that special of a talent, you're going to find your way on the field. And so what you said about Sterling Lockett, if he is that good, I know K-State's got some, they're good at the wideout spot, but there's a lot of depth there too. So maybe he doesn't see the field that much catching passes. But again, if you're that special of a talent, you're going to find your way on the field, returning, kicks or punts. That's a great way for him to get on the field.
And Fitz, before you go, I just want to point out, I think kick return suits Dylan really well because I always look at kick return as a perfect opportunity for a running back. That is reading blocks, getting up in the hole, reading the holes and exploding through it. It's very similar to, you have to have the vision that running backs have. And so I always found it a little strange that, it was Malik Knowles and Phillip Brooks because I didn't think those guys, they hit the hole hard enough sometimes. I don't think you're going to have that problem with Dylan Edwards because he's used to putting his foot in the ground and getting north to south. It felt like, they waited a little bit longer for the hole to open up as opposed to knowing, hey, this guy's going to block this guy, and then I'm going to make this guy miss, and then there's going to be another wide open hole. So I think actually kick return would be perfect for Dylan.
There's parts here we don't understand, who all they're working with. Like, is Dante Cephas working on kick returns? Because he's a little bit bigger. He's got great hands. He's an incredible athlete. He's got speed. Is that a spot where maybe he can help this team? You got 2 guys back there. But as I did a DD on this, the NFL's new kickoff rules that they've stolen from the lesser football leagues. I want to see that in college because I kind of disagree with you. I think kick returns been removed from the game because of the fair catch rule. I love that new rule where only the kicker's way back and the defenders are 10 yards off, from the front line of the return team. It cuts down on the collisions and really makes the game more exciting because the kickers have got to place it in zones to, not be penalized or however that works. So it is something that'll be sorted out in the fall, and it's something I'm really interested in, but there's just not answers after spring practice.
From Win-Win 1943, do we have a 5 or 6 year guy that will take it to the next level this year? One who is not already a key player.
5 or 6 years in the program, I would say probably not. But as far as like 5th or 6th year in college kind of guys, Fitz, you brought him up. I think Dante Cephas is one of those guys. Alec Marinko, the linebacker from New Mexico, is going to come in day 1 and be the starting middle linebacker. And so I'm really excited for him. So there are some transfers of some older guys who you might not know. Think like Reggie Stubblefield type, who kind of under the radar type transfers. So I would say Alec Marinko and Dante Cephas. Those are 2 guys who are 5th year seniors. But as far as older guys that have been in the program, do you count Brendan Mott? He was at Media Days. Like, Austin Moore, these are all guys who have played at least 2 years. And so any 5th or 6th year guy that's back is because they've played at least 2 years, and K-State felt like they needed to keep them around.
I'm glad you answered that first because I was blanking other than Mott. And I know Mott's been a starter, but he's never been really the star at defensive end. And I don't know that he will be, but he's bigger. My complaint about him is he was always so long and lean, and sometimes in run situations he wouldn't hold up. He looks bigger. I think they're going to be able to use him more in pass rush situations and have some bigger guys out there for run situations. I have a feeling Mott is just going to have a big year. But yeah, it's really hard to put my finger on anyone that I don't see an offensive lineman or receiver working their way up through the depth, that came as a walk-on or something. But that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I mean, there could be someone that's really having an incredible summer and the coaches are going to be blown away in fall camp.
Really, you're only another two candidates I could think about would be Bo Palmer at the linebacker spot. Don't know how much he's going to play with the depth that K-State's acquired in there, but you talk about a former walk-on who's kind of stuck around. That's a guy. Fitz, you brought it up. I actually think Carver Willis has a chance to make some waves on the offensive line. That might be my answer. If I'm going to answer this from a non-transfer standpoint, I might say Carver Willis at right tackle, just because Fitz, he was horrible to start the season. Let's just call it how it is. He was horrible, and K-State struggled on the offensive line because he was horrible. But then something happened, and I don't know if it was hey, you better figure this out or you're not going to play ever again for this program, or he just started to kind of click within the blocking schemes. But he was the best right tackle K-State had at the end of the year last year. And I'm really excited for him. I hope that he's able to kind of take that end of the season performance last year and move it over towards this year. Cause he's long enough. He might not be very big, but he's long enough to have a significant impact at the right tackle spot. And I'm excited to see how his development has come along.
That's a great answer. Carver Willis, might be one of the more dominating tackles this season after, he admits his first 3 games, he was awful. Mm-hmm. And if you want an example of what players mean by the game slowed down, it's Carver Willis. For 3 games, he was overwhelmed. And then in the 4th game, he said, I knew where everyone was, what everyone was doing, and I could predict what I was going to have to adjust. And, that's just understanding the game and getting comfortable, not being overwhelmed by nerves, which he admitted he was. So, yeah, Carver Willis has gone from a player I didn't want on the field to a player I don't want off the field. And that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
From El Camino Cat, the tournament tips off this weekend. Purple Rain, which is K-State's alumni team, will face off against Team Colorado in the first round in Wichita. Any thoughts about this year's team or the event in general?
Gills, you've been covering a little bit. You did a podcast with those guys. I always like when they announce the team and then there's 7 guys on game day.
Yeah.
It's like that's really the question. Who's going to actually be able to play? But I appreciate them changing the name. Purple and black just never registered with me. And even though that's what we use on our sign, I guess I should shut up about that. But yeah, this could be the best team K-State's put out there if all those pieces. Having Jacob Pullen will make you better. Will make you pretty good, but it needs some help, as we saw a couple years ago.
Yeah, I know I always kind of give my spiel about how these guys, they do like a film breakdown on Team Colorado. They have practices and they have training camp, they call it. They did a camp here in Manhattan actually earlier this week with some younger, 10, 12-year-olds, whatever, at Manhattan Christian. And so it's neat to see tonight. I guess by the time you're listening to this, it will have already happened, but they're scrimmaging KU's KU's alumni team, right? And so, they're involved, and I know there's obviously some connections with Curtis Kelly on the staff last, 2 seasons ago with Tang, and Tang competed against all these guys when he was at Baylor, but they're at the practice facility practicing for this thing, and Tang is just welcoming these guys in to his program, right? Because they wore that purple jersey, just like, it doesn't matter who the head coach was. I know, Cartier Jada, for instance, right? Yeah. He had some downs, some low points in his K-State journey, but at the end of the day, man, you played for K-State and now you're part of this team. Tang's welcoming him and they're getting together and stuff. And so, it's exciting. I don't know if this will be the year, but keep an eye out before that first game against Team Colorado for a little preview of that matchup in the tournament from either Clint or Jo. I think we'll have some quotes from him.
Cool. Look at
what a opportunity for current players to have those guys in the gym, just maybe watching them. But I'm sure they're doing, hey, can 5 of you guys hop in here and scrimmage us? Those type of things. And they can learn a lot. And I guarantee you some of those old guys are teaching the young guys, no, you got to do this. So it's great for the program. I wish them luck, and it'll give us something to watch over the weekend.
So, guys, I don't know if you guys have seen, you brought up the roster, Fitz. For those of you listening who might not know, TBT put out a final roster, would have been on Tuesday. I know we've talked about this before, but like Xavier Sneed's on that list. I'm pretty sure he's still playing in the G League, or not the G League, in the Summer League. I'm not 100% sure on that, but he's on that list. Jacob Poland, Stephen Hurt, Bebe Igiola, Cartier Jada, Justin Edwards, Kamau Stokes, Dejuan Gordon, DJ Johnson are the alumni that are on that team, mixed in with 5 non-alumni. So there's 14 guys that are technically registered on the roster. I saw something about they were only going to have, I think maybe 10 guys or 12 guys suited up. So we'll see what happens. But there will be a few non-K-State guys that are on the team. Yornay has some local connections, went to Shawnee Mission South High School. So I actually think, that's kind of cool too. As much as you want guys to be only K-State alumni, it's kind of hard to find guys who A, are available to play, B, want to play, and C, are in good enough shape to still continue to play at a high level. Because let's be honest, this is a high level basketball. It is high level. This is Europe style basketball. Bill Walker last year, as much as we love Bill, it was pretty obvious Bill had not played competitive basketball in a while, and it kind of showed. And so this is high level basketball. If you're not ready to play, then you probably shouldn't.
Gills, I'm wondering if called upon, would you serve? If they called up and said, Gills, we need a painfully white guy to fill a roster spot, you'd be there?
Yeah. I mean, we did that podcast with Jo and Clinton. I told him, like, I got cut from my high school team, but I go to the rec and I go out City Park and I get up some shots. I get up a lot of shots. I don't make a lot of them, but I'm ready. I've been waiting for this, for my whole life.
There's a difference, my friend, between taking and making.
The one, I guess, to answer the question though, the depth is why K-State, speaking with those guys, the depth is why they think that they have a chance to make a deep run this year. They feel like they've got a pretty deep roster. And because obviously you're playing, I don't know, it's back-to-back games or like one day off, but even if you win that first game, then that's when the attrition starts to set in. And so K-State, the alumni team, they feel like they've got a deep roster.
Okay.
Cole, last question of the podcast is for you, my man. Ooh. Exhausted Nihilist wants to know Cole's thought, or I'd like to hear Cole recap our MLB draftees and give us a quick rundown of who is up next and how hard it will be for the Batcats to replace those who were drafted.
Well, baseball season is in full swing, but for college baseball, it's over officially. The MLB draft obviously had just took place. K-State had 5 selections, which was the most since 2011. So more selections in the MLB draft than the 2012 team, which also made it to the Super Regionals. So I was a little surprised that, K-State had 5. Honestly, I thought they might have 6. I thought Owen Borma might have a chance to get drafted. He went undrafted. I have not seen if he's signed with anyone yet. I wouldn't be surprised to see him continue to play. K-State's big left-handed ace pitcher. But off the top of my head, let's see if I can remember this without looking at my computer. Kalen Culpepper, 21st overall in the first round to Minnesota. Guys, I don't know if you knew this or not. I believe this is K-State's second first-round pick in the history of the program. If not the second, it is the third. And then the first one, if I remember correctly, came in like the 50s or something ridiculous like that. That could have been a second-round pick. I can't remember for sure. Either way, K-State has had 2 first-round picks the last 4 years under Pete Hughes. So there's a lot of people that want Pete Hughes fired, but I encourage you to go back and look at K-State's baseball draft picks before he got here, because that might change your opinion on that. But K-State, Kalen Culpepper in the first round, and then Tyson Neighbors in the 4th round. Jackson Wentworth in the 5th round. 2 pitchers, obviously Tyson Neighbors, the All-American, Jackson Wentworth, closer / starting pitcher / utility guy and everything else. And then Brady Day and Brendan Jones. So 2 guys, to an infielder and an outfielder. So those are 5 guys that got drafted for K-State. Extremely successful. I expect all of them to sign and go on to play pro ball. And so that's your draft recap. As far as will it be difficult to replace? Yeah, anytime you have 5 guys drafted, it's not easy. But K-State's hitting the transfer portal hard, and they're really trying fits. But I think it's really cool that the baseball program has elevated to where they can lose 5 guys, and the expectations are still going to be high next year.
Yeah, Pete's doing a good job. I always get frustrated when people, start calling for a coach's head, and I'm like, he's got the program playing at a historically high level. I mean, the program's never made Omaha, and he seems to be getting them closer to that. Yeah, he's not perfect, but the program's moving in the right direction. And yeah, I think after last season, I think with the crowds K-State gets, and the fact that they do have some NIL assistance from Wildcat NIL to help retain players, but they can go get some people and that want to come and play in front of a crowd that, bluntly put, aren't quite going to get an SEC offer. So the Big 12 needs to just kind of keep carving out its space in the baseball area. But let's be honest, as the SEC expands, it's not football where they get more dominant. It's baseball. And they certainly will. Adding Texas and Oklahoma helps. And that's an important sport. That might be the second most important sport to that conference. So, congratulations to Mr. Culpepper. That is so cool. Oh, so cool. I wish he wasn't in the same division as the Royals, but so be it. That's the way the game
so
is.
you talk about the SEC fits real quick. K-State and the NIL aspect. K-State just got a transfer shortstop from Texas who was a true freshman. He didn't play a ton, or he played quite a bit. Sorry, didn't put up a ton of great stats as a true freshman. Started to do that in the Big 12. He's going to come in and be the everyday shortstop after transferring from Texas.
Right.
And so they've had they've had some pretty high level transfers in the pitching department. So they're going to rebuild. They're going to retool. They're going to find a way to continue to be successful. I would expect them to be an NCAA tournament team again next year. I mean, they are starting to really build this program in the right way, and it's pretty cool to see.
That's it for the Powercat Podcast. We appreciate you watching and listening and playing along. If you've been playing the drinking game, you probably got hammered there at the end. It was going on and off like my brain. We appreciate everyone being a part of the show. Make sure next week you get your questions in, you VIP wonderful people. You can ask unlimited questions because it's the summer and we're lonely. We're very, very lonely.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.